Move to the back of the bus and let the white people sit there. You stand over there. Do you want me to get a police officer and have you arrested? You might just have to do that. Fine, I'll do that because I'm annoying. Goodness, I didn't know that guy was so over the top. Well, that's history for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to this review of Doctor Who Series 11, Episode 3, Rosa. Okay, let's just jump right into this one because this is a difficult one to talk about because of the subject matter. Okay, the story is the Doctor and her companions go to Montgomery, in Alabama, America, 1955, where segregation and racism are all the rage, basically. So they have to be very careful, especially Ryan and Yasmin. They meet Rosa Parks, and they then realise that there's this time-travelling... they find, rather, that there's this time-travelling racist called... I can't remember his name, but he's a time-travelling racist, and he wants to prevent Rosa Parks from kick-starting the civil rights campaign by sitting on a bus and refusing to give it to a white man, her seat to a white man. So the Doctor and her companions have to do everything they can to make sure Rosa Parks kickstarts the civil rights movement because it's part of history. And yeah, whilst they don't like what's going on, whilst they don't exactly like how she was treated, they know that it's what's needed to make sure things get better. After it's like, things have to get worse to get better, basically. And in the future, things are better for everybody, or at least they try to be. But the villain doesn't want it happening because, to him, it's when everything starts to go wrong. And people like Ryan, so Ryan's kind, basically, so blacks, presumably, or African-Americans, I don't know. Basically, they're kind of ruining the universe in his perspective, in the villain's. I don't know how. It's not actually explained why the villain is so against him and what's going on. He was formerly an inmate at Stormcage facility. Nice reference, by the way. But it's not actually explained why he doesn't like black people or African Americans or whatever. Why he wants to change Rosa Parks. Why, the Rosa Parks incident, why he's doing this. The weakest element of this story is the villain. He's just there. He's just... I mean, we can presume he's a racist, but what is his motive besides racism? There seems to be something there. It's when everything went wrong, but what went wrong? What is it? What was so bad that forced him to go back in time and try and stop Rosa Parks from doing her thing? We don't know. We don't know. And we can't just blame it on him being a racist. There's got to be something else. But we don't find out, so let's just talk about what we do know. Most of the story does focus on the Doctor and her companions going around places and facing racism in several places. Ryan gets slapped for trying to return a white woman's glove. And Rosa Parks mentions Emmett Till, which I did learn about, by the way, when I did history, about the story of Emmett Till. Basically, I'll explain it to those who don't know. Emmett Till was a black boy from one of the northern states in America. He came down to, I think it was Mississippi or Alabama, one of the southern states, supposed to be for a short break, with some cousins, I think, or something. And one day he went into a shop with one of the cousins and whistled at a white woman. And then next day or 2 days or so, or a few days later, he was found dead near the river, and it was presumed that the woman's husband and his brother had killed him because he had whistled at her. And it was even taken to trial because they were found not guilty. whether they honestly were guilty is never actually said, because they don't actually know if they were guilty or not. Because it could easily have been somebody else. But for most people, they probably presumed it was the woman's husband and his brother, I think it was. And the mother of Emmett Till showed off her son's body as a response to the two men being found not guilty. Which, some people were like, ew, that's disgusting, why would she do that? Which, normally I would say, yeah, that's not nice, it's a bit disrespectful, a bit gross. But she is showing what they did down there, and how nasty people can be and the effects of it. So she's also trying to make a point about it. So some people are a bit too quick to judge, to say, as in this circumstances, there's a point being made instead of just showing off the dead body. There's actually a point. So that's your brief history lesson for today, folks. And so that's mentioned, and then they're in a restaurant, a little pub/restaurant, where they are then asked to leave because they don't serve Negroes or Mexicans, which they are talking about Yasmin at this point, even though she then later goes on to say she's from, I think, was it Iraq? It was one of the Middle Eastern countries. Might have been Israeli or Iraq, or Iran. I'm not sure. One of them. I think it might have been Israel. I don't know. One of them. But definitely, they mistook her for a Mexican. Although that being said, they weren't completely sure where to put Mexicans on the scale of blacks and whites in some places, such as on the bus. So she got a less of a raw deal than Ryan for the most of the episode. That being said, she and Ryan did have to hide from a police officer when they were at the motel, because it was whites only, so they had to hide around the back whilst the police officer came in and inspected them. He'd pretty much been stalking them. I don't know what his problem was. He watched them come out the thing, heard that they may have been causing some disruption, and came to the motel. So this guy's a bit of a stalker, this police officer. There is a nice little silhouetted moment, though, individual, so they did a great job there. Yeah, I don't know if the police officers like this stalked some people, if they had in company of black people. I know the military police used to beat up black people for no goddamn reason apart from just because, or when they're doing some the military police would beat the shit out of them when they were doing their peaceful protest, their peaceful stands, their non-violent attitudes, and the military police would basically beat the shit out of them. A bit like our police officers did to the suffragettes and well, maybe not so much the suffragists over here. Although the suffragettes were violent, there was some times where the police started the attacks or would just beat them, and the women would still get the rap for it, even though they pretty much did nothing or very little. The Black Friday incident is the best example of such a thing. God, that was our lowest moment for the police officers in this country. There's been more in America, but for the UK ones, I would say Black Friday 1913, I think it was the lowest the police have ever been. Dicks. And bastards. Thank God it's 2018. So at the end of the story, the Doctor and her companions are on the bus, and they have to make sure there's enough people on the bus so Rosa doesn't give up her seat when there's people needing to move. So when Graham goes to leave, there's still not enough people, and the Doctor says they have to stick around, otherwise time will not take place, and then more people get on the bus, and Rosa and the Blacks have to move. However, Rosa stays, and all of the main characters are just watching in shock and horror and sadness as it's going on right in front of them. Especially Graham, because he's the one who's pretty much being responsible for all of this. Him standing is the reason that Rosa has to move, basically. And it's pretty heartbreaking in a way to watch this. And especially for Graham, he is so emotional in this scene. And it's just an amazing performances throughout. And of course, history plays out how it is, and soon the Doctor and her companions have to get back to the TARDIS. The Doctor does give a small lecture on how things do turn out, though, and we do see the Rosa Parks meteor, as an asteroid in space, as well as some archive footage of her being given an award in 1999. The best year! So in the end, despite a really tragic, well, not really tragic, but really emotional and upsetting moment in history, it is also a pivotal moment to change attitudes, at least to start off the changing attitudes, or despite still the main people involved having to suffer so much as it happens. So in the end, it is a really hard event to watch, but it was written and executed brilliantly. This story really captures that feel that I also felt with Selma, the film, that was set about 9 years later, in '64. But this story definitely captures that feel so well. It is such a punch to the gut, and I don't think there's been many stories like this ever. I think the closest example is Vincent and the Doctor, where the Doctor and Amy have to showing Vincent his legacy towards the end of the story after witnessing him being treated by other people, as well as stopping a invisible alien. There have been historicals where they meet other people for a bit, but there's never been a story as impactful as Rosa in a historical story context, with the possible exception of Vincent and the Doctor, which was also amazing. I will review that on the Retro channel when I get round to Series 5. But my god, this was such a punch to the gut. Such a amazing story. It's not one I would rush back to because of said punch to the gut, but it's certainly one I would recommend viewers watching, to especially those learning about Rosa Parks and what life was back in those days, for an amazing description of the story. And for that reason, I'm going to give this story a 10 out of 10. It's not a 10 out of 10 I would enjoy watching on multiple occasions, but it's certainly one that is important for viewers to check out at least once. And certainly in a story context, it's also a great story as well as a great history lesson, and provides the series and the show even with a really important historical moment being told this way. One thing I will say about the ending is the pop song choice. I wasn't so keen on that, and the use in the credits, even less impressed. I would have preferred if they just had the song end at the end of the scene, and then we'd go to the main theme as the credits rolled. In the scene where Rosa's being arrested, it's okay, I suppose. I just wasn't so keen on the choice of music, but in that context it was okay. But once we got past the Doctor's lecture scene and the Rosa Parks asteroid shot, then I think that's when the song, we should have had another couple seconds of the characters looking out as the song finished, and then we cut to the credits with the theme playing as normal. Thankfully they went back to that with episode 4. So anyway, next time I will be looking at the 4th episode of series 11, which is Arachnids in the UK. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne YouTube channel. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to this episode of Doctor Who. Sorry, I'm starting again. And which would be, understandably, no. So, towards the end, ever. So, as well as stopping a dangerous invisible monster. Do you want me to get a policeman? Hang on.